everyone, it's Russ of Aquarimax here. I thought I'd start just a little bit early, because why not? It's kind of nice to get a good start. And I see that Blue Fox, Gotcha, Licinius, Paraplaneta Missionary, Francisco Leon, Killcast, and Max Hamilton are already here. So nice to see you here in the chat. I'm excited about today's video that will feature very prominently my cottonwood stag beetles, a species I can catch locally here. So let's see, Sharkbot also here, and Kermit the Hermit Crab. All right, so we're going to check it out. All right, so actually, Paraplaneta Missionary, we're going to talk about fruit flies in just a minute. So yeah, tree frogs. I have had tree frogs before. They're pretty cool. All right, so everyone, let's get started by taking a look at my stag beetles, and I'll kind of tell you the story about it, about how this happened. Let's see. So hello, Max Hamilton, Heather Jensen. Glad you're excited about the beetles. Brant's Pet Paradise. Hello, and Mickey M. Yes, 2 weeks in a row. Awesome. And Nezogaster. Where are these from? These are from the western United States, especially the southwestern United States. And my state kind of straddles the southwestern and a little bit above the southwestern part of the United States. So they do live in my state, and I collected these about an hour from my house. I think I could collect them even closer, but I knew about a specific spot. So Matt M, hello. And thank you, Killcast, for catching this live stream. Awesome. Max Hamilton's got dairy cows, powder blues, and oranges. Great. And Francisco Leon, we are going to see some isopods today. But I wanted to start out with these beetles. So first I'm going to show you a female of the stag beetles. Okay. This is a female right here. Now these beetles are not gigantic stag beetles, but they're the biggest species of stag beetle lives around here. And you can tell that this is a female because its head is narrower than the thorax by quite a bit, and it has much smaller mandibles. I mean, they're still, you know, fairly respectable mandibles on this beetle here, but they're much, much smaller than the males. So this is how you recognize a male. I collected 2 females and 2 males. We went to a park. This is the funny thing about these beetles, okay? They breed in decaying wood, like many other creatures that we love, like isopods and millipedes and so on. And this is often in cottonwood, dead cottonwood trees in this area at least, but it's not necessarily that. But anyway, in the past decades, when people have begun to spread wood mulch under playground areas, and then instead of removing the older mulch, the mulch just sort of deteriorates into, you know, it rots and deteriorates and becomes a lovely bed of perfect habitat for these guys. So they show up in playgrounds, and the month that they show up in adults most commonly is July. You get a few in June and some in August and so on, but July is the prime month. So I talked to my family about it and said, let's go down to this park, because we can still go to a park and still social distance fairly easily under most circumstances. So we went down to this park, and almost within a couple of minutes we saw a couple of these, and within a few more minutes there were many of these. And there were actually some kids in the park looking for these too, and they found tons of them. Like there were hundreds in the park, if not thousands of these, just in the little playground area with the bark mulch or the wood mulch under the playground equipment. And there were so many, and the kids in the park were pretty helpful in pointing them out to us and helping us find females and so on. And they even asked if they could be in the video, and that's really difficult with YouTube's rules and with safety, with social distancing, with safety and so on. We couldn't do that, but I did say I would give a shout out to the kids and just say thank you to those of you who helped me in the park. We really, really appreciate it, your help that you gave us in finding these beetles. So this is the female. Okay, and Gemma, thank you for popping in. I'm going to catch up on the chat for a minute, and then we'll go on. And then, oh yeah, Eastern Hercules beetles and stags are amazing. I'd love to see those. And yeah, there are a lot of people here, Mr. Snake. And Can you see some green coloration? It may be, I don't know. That's a good question. Well, I'm going to put this little beetle in this enclosure. This is an egg-laying enclosure. I'm going to try to do some captive breeding of these guys. Apparently, by the time you find the females, they've almost always mated anyway, but I just had the male and female together and saw some breeding activity. Males and females together, you know, the two pairs together, not with each other, but one pair with, you know, in one container enclosure and one in another. And this is made of some mostly oak, decaying oak wood, but there are some other things in there as well as a little bit of the substrate that I found when I collected them. Let's get the other female out, and then we'll look at the males, and the males are just amazing. They're very spiky, both the males and the females, in terms of their legs. They have very spiky legs, both visually and when they pick you up, or when you pick them up, they'll grab onto you. So here, let's put this female over here. I'm going to pull out this female and put her in. Oh wait, no, that's a male. It's because I had them separated into their pairs. So let me do the females first. Here's the other female. Once again, take a close look. If those of you who were here a little bit later, maybe you didn't see that the females have a head that is not as wide as the thorax, and the males have a much wider head, so that will help. And okay, I'm going to put this gal in there. She turned over and make sure she gets flipped correctly. There she goes. Put the lid on. Hopefully we can get some egg deposition going on. And now let's look at the males. Okay. There were a lot of males there. We saw many more males than females actually, but a lot of the females were minor males, or a lot of the males were minor males. They didn't have a lot of development in terms of mandibles, so we picked some males that were larger with more mandible development, and that's what this is. It's a good example. And pretty fascinating. Look at the spikes on the legs in the male there, and look at those mandibles. Just crazy. And so far these are feeding on, the adults feed on bug jelly and fruit, and I have given the bug jelly and they love it. I fed them the stuff from Bugs in Cyberspace, the Asian beetle jelly, and they just went nuts over it. They ate it so fast. I don't think I've ever seen beetle jelly disappear that fast. And then here is the next one, the next male. Pull him out. And there we are. Look at those mandibles again on this guy. And Rodrigo Garcia. I have never used locusts as feeders. I have used grasshoppers as feeders. And Daniel, you got your first beetle ever today. Awesome. This species is flighted. They show up at lights at night. And these spikes, yeah, it's hard to get these guys off. Your hands, they're very, very spiky. And sometimes they get a little bit bigger than this, but this is a fairly large male. They're not a huge stag beetle species, but this is what we get here. You have to be really careful with beetle species. A lot of the international, well, as far as I know, all the international species are illegal, except for things like superworms. Those are not, but most beetle species from out of the country illegally. You can get some native species, but you have to be careful about that. And so anyway, there you go. And Braden Moore, welcome. And Heather Jensen, I just might, because I have that species on my list of species I'm able to import. So yeah, let's talk about that if you want to contact me on Instagram. And I'm not sure how to say your name, Quanto H2S8. You may have I'm trying to remember what that species is called. Is it the Chestnut Stag Beetle? Or I can't remember what it is. But I do love their faces, yeah, Odie's. Okay, now I have a Patreon question I'm going to answer. This is from our newest patron. Sent this message in today, and it is about these guys, Armadillidium klugi. Can you even see that? Let me see if I can make that a little bit easier to see. These are a few of my Armadillidium klugi. He had a question about these and just joined Patreon today. And one of the things I do on Patreon, of course, is that if you join Patreon, I will make sure to answer your questions in a video if you ask. If you're in the $5 tier or above, I will make sure to answer a question in a video. If you're in the $1 tier, I try too, and I think I've been pretty good about doing that as well. But it's one of the definite perks of the $5 and above tier. At any rate, I'm going to answer this question about Armadillidium klugi. Drew I says that he recently started a colony of Armadillidium klugi Montenegro, clown isopods, these guys. And he said he set them up in a critter carrier enclosure with plenty of ventilation through the lid, and they seemed to be happy. The issue is after a few weeks, the carrier went from no fruit flies to a dozen fruit flies. He cleared the adults out the best he could and put saran wrap over the lid to keep more out. Later he was sifting through the substrate and moss a bit and found a baby clown isopod. Also found an alarming number of fruit fly larvae. Question is, do I redo the whole substrate and risk harming the baby isopods, or wait and watch diligently for adult flies and manually clear them out? Can the isopods and fruit flies coexist peacefully for a time, or should I nip this in the bud now? Well, I would love to answer this question, and there's a couple things I want to address first. One is that these may or may not be fruit flies. It is possible that fruit flies have infested your isopod culture, but they could be fungus gnats or phorid flies, both of which are fairly similar to fruit flies. So maybe Google fungus gnat, and I actually have a video about fungus gnats, so you can get a close look at what they look like. You can also, phorid flies is spelled P-H-O-R-I-D. You can look up phorid flies, try to figure out which one it is. Fungus gnats are thinner than fruit flies, but otherwise pretty similar in appearance, kind of blackish color. The phorid flies are bigger than fruit flies, and that can give you some idea, but bigger than at least melanogaster fruit flies. They're more like Heidi fruit flies in size. At any rate, either way, the treatment's going to be pretty similar. I would suggest taking out the substrate, taking the adults out and any babies you can find, and starting them over in fresh substrate, but that's not going to be enough, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So, yes, remove them all if you can. Put them in a fresh substrate so that you're not dealing with all of those fungus gnats or fruit flies or whatever they are. But retain all of that substrate and put that in a separate container. As far as the original container, the critter carrier, you need to maintain high ventilation, and the saran wrap is going to reduce that. So what I would suggest doing is putting, instead of using saran wrap, under the critter carrier lid, I would put some chiffon fabric. It's very, very fine. It does not allow fungus gnats to travel through it as long as it's on there tight enough. So you set it over the enclosure itself, but under the lid. So when the lid snaps down, it makes a barrier to keep those fungus gnats, fruit flies, whatever they are, out. And so you do that in one container. In the other container, you could put a similar lid on, but I would try sifting through the substrate, get some babies out, and move them over to the adult container, and then letting it sit, again, ventilated in a similar way, and just going through it every week or two to see if you can find any baby isopods and retain it until you're reasonably sure you have not sacrificed, you're not going to sacrifice any isopod babies. And then you can freeze the rest of it and make sure you get rid of all those flies and fly larvae. But if you let it go for several weeks or a month, then you should be able to get out all the isopods if you go through it regularly. And one thing you might consider doing is using something like mosquito bits or Natrol, G-N-A-T-R-O-L. I use mosquito bits to help control fungus gnats in my isopod enclosures. You soak a few of the granules in some purified water and then add that to the culture. Make sure not to pour it directly on any isopods. But it is a type of bacterium that kills fly larvae and does not kill isopods, at least not when you don't pour it directly on them. And I've used it with good success in some of my enclosures with millipedes and so on. And it can help you out. So that may be a way to go that can help you deal with this problem and solve it. I hope that really helps. And thank you, Drew I, for becoming a patron today. That's awesome. So I'm going to put a lid back on these guys, and we're going to check out the beetles a little bit more, and I'll check out the chat as well. So I'm actually going to grab the Armadillidium Klugi container for a second, just to put everybody back in. And here we go. So you can see I've got a lot of Klugi in here, and this is not, the only piece of wood in there, but there are a lot in there. And I just took, there are probably, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, something like that I'm just putting back in. Very cool species. Like it a lot. Let's see, trying to catch up. Any experience with Senegal bikers or bichers or bashirs, however you call it? I do not have any experience with those fish. I have seen them. I think they're cool, and they're on my list of fish that I think are cool, but I have never kept any. Do you know the native isopods that live in Yellowstone National Park? I don't. It's a good question. I don't think there are very many that are actually native. There may be quite a few feral ones, but most of the portions of the United States that went through a glaciation don't have any isopod species there. I'm not going to say there aren't any, but probably not a whole lot, just because of that glaciation event that wiped out most native isopods in the U.S. and left things open for the feral individuals to come in. Yeah. Okay, let's look at this guy for a minute. Look how glossy it is. I mean, it's really pretty cool. I should do a comparison of male and female so you can see the difference in the mandibles while we're talking about these guys. Put him over there and make sure I grab a female so we can tell what's going on. And bear with me a second as there's nothing cool on the screen. I'm getting there as I'm catching up to the chat. So is it Kiara Austin? You want to get into inverts but not sure what to start with? Some sort of beetle species. Great beetle species to start out with as a pet could be the blue death finning beetles or other desert darkling beetles. They're really easy to keep, live a long time. Some of them can be captive bred. The other ones we're learning how to crack the code on. So that might be a good way to go. And they're really, really easy. Oh, don't want this guy to crawl off as I catch up here. Oh, it looks like Francisco Leon said that. So if you can see the difference in the mandibles and the head size, check that out. I mean, that is a big head compared to that head. They're very obviously different. His head is about as wide as his thorax, and her head is much less wide than her thorax. He's very active right now, isn't he? Crawling all over the place. So, that's cool. Okay, I'm trying to catch up on the chat now. Do springtails take care of fungus gnat larvae and eggs? Well, they won't necessarily remove them if you add springtails to an infested culture of isopods, for example, an infested substrate. But what they do is tend to outcompete them. The best thing to do is add the springtails as early as possible before the fungus gnats get a foothold, and they will help reduce the likelihood of infestation, and adding them will eventually help even if you do have an infestation. If you add springtails and you can get them going, they will tend to outcompete them, but it won't be an immediate sort of, they're going to mop everything up for you, but it will help to tend to stabilize the ecosystem in a positive way that will help remove those over time. Let's see. And Heather said, I've been having a ton of fun with a few slime molds that have popped in my terrarium recently. So fun. My pet moss must have been inoculated in some way. You know what? I've had the same thing going on in my dart frog enclosure, some slime molds, which are pretty cool. They're not the same as normal molds at all, but they're called slime molds, and they're very interesting because they can go dormant in a dry sort of cyst stage. They make choices. Scientists have studied how they'll make choices between different foods. And they're kind of like an amoeba in that they sort of crawl to things, but they sort of have a root-like structure, for lack of a better term. Pretty cool. And I've been watching them move around in my dart frog enclosure lately. And thank you for joining in, Wally of Supreme Gecko. And Rodrigo Garcia, Peter Clausen's video on bugs in cyberspace will definitely help set up with enclosure. He's got a great two-part series on darkling and desert darkling beetles in enclosures and all sorts of things about the feeding and whatnot. It's very cool. So I do recommend that as well. I've enjoyed the series that he has put out on that. He has great videos in general, and this is a fun one. So Licinius keeps an isopod culture in my terrarium. Is this a bad idea? They have started breeding and babies have appeared. A lot of people do that. I don't think that's a bad idea. It depends on, of course, which species you keep. There are some species that will probably eat your vivarium out of house and home, so to speak. But most species work really well in that sort of situation. And let's see. Oh, thank you, Max. I appreciate that. I'm glad you find my video super helpful. I try. So, Francisco, do you think isopods breed faster in the wild or in captivity? Well, I have heard that, and I don't know if this is true, but I read somewhere that Armadillidium vulgare doesn't breed as often in the wild as it does in captivity, and it seems like that makes a lot of sense just based on, at least in temperate areas where there's a period during which they're completely inactive, that you could definitely get more clutches of babies to hatch from the marsupium the female carries on her body more frequently, just because they're active more often. So I would say probably in captivity. And Rodrigo, have you ever kept a katydid? Not long term. Kept him for a day or two, just to take photos of it and whatnot. And thank you for the like spike suggestion, Supreme Gecko. Right now we have more likes than we have viewers, so the tables have turned. And cool. And Kermit the Hermit, Crab. I don't know how you remember all these names. I don't know. Animal names are kind of fun to remember, for me at least. And catching up. My first invertebrates are blue death finding beetles from bugs in cyberspace. They're fantastic. I agree. And Jordan Safala, glad to have you here. Have I been feeding my slime modes? Not really. I've just been watching what they're feeding on naturally. Like, I think they're feeding on what frogs leave on the glass and stuff. But I thought about it. I've heard you can just feed them oatmeal. I thought about putting some in petri dishes and stuff and doing the whole thing with the oatmeal. I had a piece of cork bark as my first invert. If you keep the invert, you know what I'm talking about. One of the pet hole inverts. And Drew, oh, you're in the house. You got here. Awesome. I'm glad I was able to answer your question. And Nezogaster, I will try to get these beetles to breed. I definitely picked out 2 pairs with the intent of doing that. I probably would not have collected 2 pairs if I hadn't seen so many beetles at the site. But there were so many. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised if there were had been thousands of beetles in just that small area of the park that I was in, because of the number I saw in the very small area that I looked. So, in Paris, there's an enclosure with just slime molds in it. That's kind of cool. So, and Sindel Carballo, I don't know how you pronounce that one. Thank you for your DIY beetle jelly video. I used to import beetle jelly from Japan, but due to COVID, service was suspended. Oh, good. Glad to hear that. I guess that is a problem I hadn't thought of yet, because I have a store of beetle jelly that I got from Bugs in Cyberspace, but that could eventually be an issue. Yeah, I love the bug jelly from Beetle Cyberspace. The stuff that I make on my videos is good stuff, but I've just found that with the time that I have, it just works better to use the pre-made stuff from Bugs in Cyberspace for me lately. Let's see. And mile-high tarantulas, how long are they larvae for? I've heard up to a year. So it'll be a long waiting game, but that tends to be the thing with a lot of the beetles. They have long larval stages, and the adults can live up to a year too, so it's not a super short-lived creature. Let's see. Blue Fox, hello. Can I do another video on red velvet ants? I do have a couple of red velvet ants, so I should do that, huh? Let me put... Hopefully I get the right containers here. I don't want to put males together. That would be stupid. Okay, so this one is my mail container. Put this guy in here, and I'm going to do some isopods too, because they just get a little bit hard to control after a while. They crawl around my hands with their little claws. So I'll kind of have those in the background, and they can bury themselves a little bit while we look at some other things, huh? Okay. So Heather Jensen's been doing the oats, and mold has doubled in size. Awesome. I do think that would be a fun thing. They're not exactly invertebrates, so I might not make a best pet invertebrate video, but it would be fun to do a video on slime molds. They're not exactly in the animal kingdom, but they're sort of, I can't remember what their exact taxonomic designation is. Check out how my milkbacks are doing. They're doing pretty well. I'm kind of excited about it. Let's see. So Newt Scamander's going to be ordered Blue Death Fainting Beetles. Awesome. Very cool. I'm getting eggs from mine. They're producing a lot of eggs. And I've been checking the pupae to see if I have any adults. I don't yet, but I'm looking. The invisible tailless whip scorpion. Chucking a cricket disappears 5 hours later. Yeah, they can be hard to see. I do have a feeding video of tailless whip scorpion where you can see it eat the bug really clearly. And it's actually a pretty popular video. It's just like tailless whip scorpion feeding or something like that is what it's called. If you want to see one eat, it's really fun. What should I get from bugs in cyberspace? I want to get a new bug. Well, what are you into, Rodrigo? What have you had? What do you have? Isopods is always a good suggestion. So Supreme Gecko. I have to ask, how are the multis doing? Still getting babies? You don't have to show them, just curious. I have multis of various ages in there. I don't have any really super new fry, but I've got quite a few young juveniles, small juveniles that are like probably, well, they're a fraction of the size of the adults. I don't know. It's hard to measure them really. But I don't have any super tiny babies, but I think I'll probably get some soon. Been feeding a lot of baby brine shrimp, a lot of microworms, in addition to other foods. And I am doing an update on the tank, which is fun. I just updated the lighting. I added a bunch of dwarf water lettuce to the top and some hornwort to see if I can get those to do well in the tank with the new lights. And we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping it will go well. I'm also going to put some plastic Vallisneria. So I'm going to have live plants in there. I already do. But I'm going to put some plastic Vallisneria down in among the shells because I think it'll look more interesting. And I'm hoping that changing things up a little bit, maybe it'll stimulate the multis to breed again, because it's been a little while, not a super long time, because I got lots of fry in there, but no super young fry. So maybe doing that will make a difference. Maybe the new plants, something, kind of do it. Jumping spiders are so fun. I do have jumping spiders. I wonder if I can get my jumping spider to come out and do her thing. I don't know. Let me see if I can. If she will come out. You have to be careful with jumping spiders. You can't just force them to come out. It's not cool. They don't like it. But if I can get one to come out, if I can get her to come out, I do have two, but one of them's really little, not very tame at all yet. But she is fairly tame. She just ate dinner, so maybe she's ready to come out. I don't know. Let's see what she thinks about coming out. So I'll try to coax her out gently as you check out these isopods and I look at the chat. Let's see. So will I ever breed red velvet ants? I don't know. I'm going to try. My cousin knows a little bit about that, and we're actually going to do a collaboration video because he's a velvet ant expert professionally. I mean, he's an entomologist, and one of his specialties is research on velvet ants, and he has some interesting information about that. So we'll be doing a collaboration video about that, and so you'll be finding out more about that fairly soon. We're trying to figure out a good day for such a video, and maybe that will become a reality. I hope so. I really hope so, because that's a species, a taxon, I should say, because there are many species of velvet ants, like 8,000 species of velvet ants, I think. We need to get breeding in captivity. And let's see. Any gravid rubber duckies? Not sure. Most of mine are really small. I do have a couple of big ones. And I do have a scorpion, actually. Maybe I'll show that. This is my jumping spider. And this is a Phidippus regius. And she's a pretty cool little lady. Her name is Padme, after the Star Wars character, if you know, if you follow some of the Star Wars things. So she's awesome. I love these spiders. They're super cool. Let's see. And I do have a scorpion. Maybe I can show you my Asian forest scorpion. Not such a scorpion anymore. I mean, it's not adult, but it's not tiny either. If we have time today. Is it usual for isopods to die every day in your enclosure, or is it rare? I would say that's a problem. Unless you have a huge enclosure with thousands of isopods, then 1 or 2 deaths a day is probably not a big deal. But if you just have, say, 10, 12, 15, even 50, and you're seeing deaths every day, you probably, there's something going on. Something going on. Dune scorpions, yeah. And millipedes are awesome, of course. Mr. Efin, hello. Have I read that isopod book by Oren McMonigal? Not yet. I want to. I should have asked for his updated version of the book for my birthday or something. I haven't done that. How long does an isopod usually live? Probably depends on species, but I think several of the species can live a couple of years, maybe even 3. And let's see. Oh, there she goes. She's leaping. I'm going to collect her here. What are all these isopods doing up high, so high? Here, I'm just going to, she's out of the shot, but I'm going to collect her onto my hand, just gently. There we go. Get her back in. There she is. She's a beauty. I love her orange color. I almost named her Pumpkin because of that, but that's kind of, hope she's not going to try to go after an isopod. She just ate, so probably not. But we'll see. So catching up on the chat. Sorry I'm so behind, everybody. And yep. Oh, Leala spoke to you on Instagram recently about pill millipedes. So cool to see you live. Awesome. Glad to hear that. And I haven't bred velvet ants yet, but I have some information about it. Benjamin Bramble, super chat. Awesome. Thanks for the help this last weekend. Glad we're doing this topic right now too. Awesome. That is very cool. Yeah, hopefully it'll help you. If you are going to do some of the similar kind of collecting. Rodrigo, I really appreciate the super chat. And if you have a question you want me to answer on the live stream, Benjamin, please go ahead. Rodrigo, I like carnivorous insects, but I don't find assassin bugs interesting because of how they feed. Other insects that feed similarly are not very interesting to me. Interesting. Well, to each his own. You know, I really like how mantids feed, and I think actually I would do assassin bugs for sure. My wife were a little bit more receptive to them, but she's not all that excited about it. Ah, your scarlet millipede must have molted, Mr. Eufin. And gravid newt, possibly. She has produced, she hasn't ever mated, but they will produce egg cases anyway. And she has produced 2 already. And it's been, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 weeks since she produced her last one, so she might still produce another, but it will be a dud. They will be slugs, so to speak. Oh, I gotta pick her up. I don't want a whole bunch of spider webs in there. I actually like Peaches, that's a cool name. I'm just scrolling through. And let's see. So Andrew Ewald, welcome. Mr. Efin was bit by a tiger centipede. How did that feel? I have a memory of when I was a kid. I think I was bitten by a Scolopendra polymorpha as a kid. I'm not sure now, but it was too big to be a stone centipede, and it hurt quite a bit. So I'm wondering if that's what it was. And she is adorable, isn't she? So I have jumping spiders all around my house. I love them. My favorite type of spider. Definitely my favorite too. And Francisco, I usually make them on Wednesdays at 5:30 my time. So that's generally when I do it. I might do some differently during the summer a little bit, but generally that's the time I do it. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up on the chat and I'm having some difficulties doing it. So Oh, have you ever had any Jerusalem crickets? I flipped one in California once, and they live here in my state. I've never actually found one in my state, but I have a coworker who will send me pictures every time he finds one. He'll be up jogging in the foothills here, and he'll find one. So I know they're around here. I think that would be an interesting insect to make a best pet invertebrate video about. And Veranid Guy, thank you for all the help and answers you gave me regarding isopods. I appreciate you. The colony is doing great so far. Well, thank you, Veranid Guy. I appreciate that. I remember talking to you about the powder orange isopods on Instagram. And Veranid Guy's been around for a long time because when I did the fish podcast, the aquarium podcast, he was there with that. So you've been around for a long time, and I appreciate the continued support very much. So tailless whip scorpions are very cool. I have one right now. What species of isopods are the speediest breeders? Some really fast ones are dwarf whites, dairy cows, and Porcelaonides pruinosus. Why is it not focusing? There we go. So if you guys want to see the Asian forest scorpion, let me know, and I'll see if I can show you. It was like a bee sting. Well, that's good. That's not so bad. And newt scamander, they do tend to hang out with their infertile egg cases for a little while. Mole crickets. See, there's another one I haven't kept. How are your blue death fainting beetles? Any pupating yet? I think some are pupating. I can't really disturb the substrate to tell, but I haven't seen larval movement for a while, so hopefully they are. And, oh yes, and so now I've gotten to the super chats. I was just behind, but thank you, Wally, for checking. Hopefully they were here and were able to catch them. And okay, so scorpion. Okay, let's do it. I'm going to put, everybody say bye to Padme here. I'm going to put her away. See if you can get a close-up on her face because she's so cute. Isn't she? Look at that. Look at that cute little face. So cute. Okay, hard to beat that. Okay, I'm going to put her away now. And I'll get the scorpion out, and you guys can appreciate the milkbacks while we're doing that. She doesn't really want to go back in a lot of the time. See, I'm having trouble getting her back in her enclosure. She's like, no, I'm out now. Come on, what are you doing? See if I can get her to go back in. Okay, I think she's going to do it. Maybe. She's still, no, she doesn't want to go back in. Let me see if I can put her on her branch. Sometimes she'll go onto the branch, and then it's easier to get her back in the enclosure. Some people say that these are as intelligent, or, oh, see, there she goes right under my hand, as intelligent as dogs. And I don't know if that's true or not, but they definitely have a lot of personality for an invert. And they're right up there with mantis, and you know, they're hard to beat for that. And they're very cute, also hard to beat for that. So I just got her successfully put away. Okay, so scorpion time. I'm going to go get the Asian forest scorpion. I do have to unplug the enclosure, so it's going to take me a second because there's a heat pad on the side of the enclosure. I wouldn't put one on the bottom, but I do have one on the side because they like it warm. They like it really warm. So I'm going to track down. There we go. Gotta unplug that. And check out this little beauty. To put my isopods away for that. Oh, they're really trying to climb out. What's going on with that? Let me move the wood. Good thing I got a nice secure lid on these guys, huh? Don't want to lose my milkbacks. They're swiftly rising in the ranks to one of my favorite isopods, as I find that they reproduce nearly as well, maybe as well as the dairy cow isopods, and have fantastic, stunning patterns. Okay. We're going to take a peek at this little Asian forest scorpion. It's going to need a much bigger enclosure when it's an adult, but for now it's pretty small still. It's gone through a few instars with me. I got it when it was tiny. I mean, it came in a 2-ounce deli cup, and it was so small that I kept it in there for a while. You can probably see there's a couple little isopods and springtails kicking around down there. I've got the dwarf purples in there because they're pretty safe. Now the lighting is really crummy, but let's see. Oh, that's not so bad. You can see her hanging out down there. It's about time to feed her. She likes to eat superworms and crickets and stuff. And I caught a desert scorpion in my mom's a couple of nights ago. Awesome. And Rodrigo, I can show you the container, but I can't actually show you the pupae because they're all buried. Orchid Mantis. I have to go in the other room to get the Orchid Mantis, but maybe I can do that. I'd have to take off my microphone and leave you all hanging. Roachant in the house. Nice to see you here. Do isopods leave a scent trail for their isopods to follow? I have a few escapees and they always end up in the same area. That is a very fascinating question. I don't know the answer, but I would like to. I sometimes have wondered if they do stuff like that, but I don't know of any research, but there may be some. I mean, fascinating topic you've brought up, and I would be very, very interested in finding out more about that, if anybody knows of any research on that topic. That's awesome. An awesome type of speculation. And how often do you add supplemental food to an isopod colony? The fish flake super quick within 24 hours, it seems. At least twice a week I add the supplemental food, sometimes more, but twice a week is the bare minimum. It's nice to actually keep something that's not going to mold fast in there 24/7. Not that you want a lot of it in there and you don't want it to be in there so long it'll mold, but if you have some supplemental food all the time, you're going to get the best results in terms of reproduction. And Heather Jensen, yeah, the Nisotums, they are one that does that. Dwarf striped will do that and crawl out. And jumping spiders should live alone except when mating, because if you keep them together, you will get some cannibalism, almost certainly. And I want to show you guys how big this scorpion is. Okay, it is not a tiny scorpion, but it's still got a lot of growing to do. You can see it's probably about 2.5 inches long. If it were stretched out with the telson all stretched out, it'd be bigger than that. But right now, in the position it's in, it's about 2.5 inches long, probably. And let's see. And Moombas. I love all my P. labus, one of my favorite species. Definitely one of mine too. So, stag beetle, you mean how long are these scorpions' lifespan? These can live quite a few years, several years. I'm not sure the exact lifespan, but they have a pretty decent lifespan. Oh, Leal, you found sun beetle grubs. Awesome. I would keep those if I could. I can't. Can't get the sun beetles here legally. You can get fruit beetles here, harlequin fruit beetles, but you can't get the sun beetles. And are you going to try to breed your stag beetles? Definitely, definitely. These are my males. Okay, these females have already mated. She's already buried herself. She could be depositing eggs right now, for all we know. I'm definitely going to try to breed them. And this female's buried herself as well. So this is fermented oak substrate mostly, and I'm hoping to get them to breed. You can see the males are still active at the surface. Did I screw it up? Oh, I totally did. You know what I did? I put a female in a male enclosure. So now I have to play with that. I'm going to have to take everybody out and fix it. Not a huge deal, because a female in a male enclosure is not going to cause a huge problem. But a male and a male together would fight, so don't want that. So I'm going to have to take everybody out and figure it out and see what I messed up with. Bugman has 15 scorpions. Awesome. And feather millipedes group together a lot, huh, Heather? Interesting. And dairy cows. Oh yeah, dried mealworms, almost anything. If I have a pinky mouse, none of my snakes are hungry, or, you know, not none of my snakes. There's never a time when none of my snakes are hungry. But if one of my snakes is not hungry and doesn't eat its mouse, and none of the other snakes want it because they've already eaten enough, or I don't want to give them another because they've already eaten too much or whatever, then I just throw it usually in my dairy cow enclosure, and it's gone like super fast. They are protein hungry. I've also done that with Porcellanidae pruinosis, and they'll eat it too. Okay. Do jumping spiders have any specific needs enclosure-wise, like anything really specific? Yes, they do. And let me show you what I mean by that, because that's a great question, and I have a good answer for you, I feel like. I know some people have kept them in simpler enclosures, and there are ways to do it, but generally there's some really specific needs they have, and they can be addressed properly by keeping them in the proper enclosure. So, bear with me on this, because she's eaten a few bugs. I haven't cleaned out her enclosure yet this week. I usually do it approximately weekly, but it hasn't been cleaned out yet. Okay, see, this enclosure is from bigfatfids.com, who's actually local. He lives just in my same city, and he produces these enclosures, which are really cool. This is called a Fid Condo, or a Spider Condo, and as you can see, it's got these ventilated gaskets. Ooh, I gotta be careful. I see where she is though, so that's not a problem. Ventilated gaskets, one up here at the top, one here on the side, so they got plenty of ventilation, but it does hold some humidity, which they need. Trying to focus there, it's not going to focus on the spider very well. You can see she's got her little hammock up here. Now these little hammocks they have, and this one I believe was one of the ones she laid eggs in, but then the eggs dried up and stuff because they were infertile, because she's never mated. They need to be able to build their hammocks up high in the enclosure. They usually build it touching the top, as you can see. She did that with this one. Not all the time, but usually they prefer to build it in the top. So you don't want an enclosure like, ooh, sorry. I grabbed that just wrong. Okay, not an enclosure like this, because whenever you open it, you disturb that little hammock and mess it up. So this kind of enclosure where you can open the lid without disturbing the hammock is much, much better for them. And they need good ventilation. They need some height. And as you can see, she's got something else to climb on. And so she loves that. Does really well in this. And these are one of the most popular enclosures kept by, used by keepers of jumping spiders. Seriously. So they're very cool. They need humidity, so I do spray the enclosure, not the spider, but the enclosure a couple times a week so she can get a good drink. And in some cases, people will keep cocoa fiber or something in a little bioactive thing. I've been thinking about doing that. In this enclosure, I haven't done it yet. Haven't had this spider for all that long. But she is a great eater. She's fantastic. One of the best appetites I've ever had in terms of jumping spiders. She eats flies, she eats mealworms, she eats crickets, she eats moths, she eats lots of things. But flies are generally the best food for them. She'll even eat waxworms. I mean, she'll eat anything. And so, very cool. But those are some of the things. They do need warmth. I keep her on top of my snake enclosure where she can have a warm side. One side is close enough to the heat lamp of the spiders that she has a thermal gradient. One of the walls gets warmer than the others, which I can test with my heat gun. And she likes to bask on that wall and get warm. So they do like that. So what predatory insect do we recommend? Probably a mantis. Narcissus americanus bred yet? Yes, they have. I've got babies in there. And they're growing. Hello, Chad. Solvanite, ZK, what do you think of coconut beetles? I haven't kept any, or I don't even know much about them because they're probably one that's illegal in our state. So I don't have any good information on coconut beetles. Sounds cool though. I mean, just about any beetle, seriously, to me is super cool. But I don't know much about them because so many beetles are illegal here. These are legal because they are the same. I mean, they're native here, so I can just go pick them up. Fortunately. Banded crickets, they are. I love banded crickets compared to the normal house crickets. They're much better, and I'm glad you could recognize the chirp. They're much quieter, they're easier to culture, they live longer, they smell less. Loving them. And have you ever kept cockroaches as pets? I haven't. They're one of the few kinds of creatures my wife absolutely prohibits, so I haven't kept any cockroaches of any kind. Thank you for joining in, Wally. You're probably gone now, but it was great to have you in the house, as always. Kind of flies, fruit flies or house flies. When they're larger like this, when they're an adult spider like this one, who's now hanging out in her little hammock up at the top there, you can see that, they require larger flies. House flies aren't going to do it for them. So blue bottle flies, house flies, that kind of stuff. And they eat, Licinius, they need to eat approximately 2 or 3 times a week, usually. Depends on the size of the food item, too. And thank you, Mr. Efin. The mantis video was really fun to do. So, yeah, Paraplaneta missionary. They are super cool, the bandids. And they're easy to breed. Not that the other ones aren't. They're all easy to breed. But I was a little bit concerned at first that they weren't going to breed for me as well. But they are. I've got way more than I purchased. So this specific beetle you can only find in the summer, mostly in July. And you find them in... The easiest place to find them is playgrounds where there's a thick layer of wood mulch. And let's see. I got several larger land snails, much to my husband's chagrin. He got to name them Smoky Bandit and Snowman. Colors match the names. I actually love land snails. We can't get the like the huge ones I used to see in Hawaii legally here. So I've never kept those. But I have, when I was a kid, I kept the Cornu aspersa, the garden snails, and they're pretty cool. And all right. And Newt Scamander, well, thanks for joining in and enjoy your walk. Preston, new to the channel, came over from Peter Clausen. Awesome. What kinds of insects do you raise? Well, right now, in terms of insects that I raise, I've got velvet ants, I've got desert beetles, including blue death fanning beetles and other types of desert beetles, banded crickets, mealworms, superworms, just starting with these stag beetles, these local cottonwood stag beetles. Have an orchid mantis, and then I've got lots of other invertebrates that aren't insects, from a vinegaroon to Asian forest scorpion. I've got jumping spiders. I've got many species of isopods. Lots and lots of things. I wonder if I could get my vinegaroon to come out. Let me see if I can. And so, Kiara, a few of your lizards refuse to eat banded crickets. Interesting. So far, I've had really good experiences with my geckos eating the banded crickets, my scorpion eating the banded crickets. Everybody seems to like them, but that's interesting. What kind of lizards? I'm curious about that. Here's my vinegaroon. This is probably going to be the last critter because I need to go soon, but I'm having the hardest time finding the chat button. It's not working. How do you care for normal beetle or grub? Well, it totally depends on the species, but many of the adults will eat beetle jelly, which is nice, but the larvae have different requirements in terms of what substrate or foods they need. So it totally depends. Otala lactea. I don't know if I've dealt with that species before. That's cool. So Mystery Fin, 3 Scolopendra polymorpha, 1 Alipes grandidieri, and 50 lithobius. Whoa, cool. Thanks, Bugman, for joining in. Gotta find some first stag beetle, then I gotta see if I can give Russ some. I don't know if it's been mentioned, but any updates on your blue death fanning beetle project? As far as I know, I have pupae, but I can't check on them very well because they're all buried in the substrate in the incubator, so I can't really check it out. Can't see them, but hopefully I'm just checking every day to see if anything shows up in there. Huh, bearded dragon and 2 Cubanite anoles that won't do it. So you found what I'm holding, but how to care for it. They like a deep substrate with some moisture to it, some cork bark or flat rocks on the surface, and they eat things like crickets and superworms and whatnot, mealworms, that kind of thing. And I do name some of my bugs, not all of them, Dexter, but some of them. And Mickey Am says, my vinegaroon has an egg sac. Awesome. Hope it has a happy ending. Going to post on a arachnoboard. I can get some pictures, really unexpected. Oh, that's super cool. I know they can breed in captivity. This is a captive bred individual right here, but it's not done as often as it should be. What is? Oh, you got a piece of little dust on your Telson there. I didn't find Scolopendra heros in Wyoming. It was too rainy. Well, that's sad. All right, well, I'm approaching an hour, and I was only supposed to do half an hour, but it's been fun. Thank you for joining in. Thank you to Benjamin and Verenid Guy for the super chats. Thank you to Wally for modding. Thank you for Drew I for his question on Patreon. And thank you to you all for joining in. I really appreciate the support. And I hope you have a great day. And be sure to check out my video on Friday. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody.